Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of Unlock Eric and Mark here with you. It's been a minute. We return after a week hiatus to, recharge, reconnect before playoffs, and we're gonna come back swinging with a little bit of global power rankings. And let me tell you, best of fives, dark horses abound. There is some absolute shakeup on this list, and we'll get to all the good stuff, but the LPL has just gotten insane, Mark, and I don't really know what to think about it.
Even with a week hiatus removed, the power rankings on the global scale would be shifting to a large degree, given the action that we have seen throughout the major regions, the timing, the importance of playoffs, these best of series as you laid out. Yeah, we're going to have some movement, so let's waste no more time and dive into this power rankings.
And before we get to absurd certain 1-13 squad making an incredible climb, we have to start with the disappointing end, and that is the anemic 0-6 playoff push that we got out of Team Vitality. Yes, the number one seed in the LEC. There's something about it in Europe. There's always a certain squad that disappoints, but even I didn't have the bees buzzing out so feebly.
Yeah, this is a problem because it's one of those ones where whatever percentage, and it's a large percentage, you can attribute to how the scheduling kind of screwed over Vitality, for lack of a kinder term or more gentle term there. Because this squad, absolutely, the way that the scheduling worked out and how infrequent you were going to be playing, there's no way you could be at a similar type of preparation and just vibes type of energy and locked in focus that you've seen from teams that are playing at that type of regularity, and especially considering what teams were playing towards the end of the LEC that were getting that type of regularity and real sharp tune-up and test before playoffs. Vitality didn't get any of that, and that was a large part of our concern of not just, again, losing out in the popular mind and recency and what have you done for me lately type of situation, but truly in how you were going to be prepared for these playoffs, for these best of rounds later. And I think that goes into a large percentage of where you saw them fail and falter.
Yeah, and what we're now quickly learning is that what was going to be important were these scrims, the practice they were going to get because they had so few stage games. And now we're learning they were basically running it down in a lot of them, maybe not taking them too seriously. That was our main concern. And now you have the MVP, top seed, going 0-6. And yeah, they had some leads, but I mean, getting 3-0'd against Giant X, that's how we're going to end the season for this squad? Oh, come on.
It's a big disappointment, and it's absolutely one of those ones where it's going to take some time to find the sunny side, right? To find some of that positivity that, you look at this split and realize there is a lot of ground made against the competitive teams within the LEC and what you've seen from this iteration of the team. But also, it kind of confirms a lot of the concerns and doubts and problems that people did identify with this roster, with individual players on it. So I think it's going to be one of those ones where it takes some time in this off season, but you can still be hopeful for this to be a learning moment, learning stepping stone for this group as Vitality. But it absolutely will leave you with a bitter taste in the mouth for at least the next couple of weeks.
Barely holding on to this top 20 spot, and they're not going to get higher than 19. But then we've got still some undefeated squads as Team Secret Wales kicked off their playoffs with 2 series wins. Yes, they were pushed to Game 5 against Deep Cross Gaming, but came away with the win there to be sitting pretty later on in that playoff bracket. And they're pretty consistently been hanging out in this spot. It's really just, is this squad going to be even better than what we saw out of them at first stand?
Yeah, and I think that's the exact hope here from coming back from first stand and being able to put out a split like this. The performances that we have seen to that level and consistency of excellency within the region has been one of the big things going for Team Secret Wales. And as you said, being pushed and challenged within playoffs here isn't exactly the panic or, oh, there it is, they're not as strong as the record shows type of thing. This is simply one of these ones where, again, things change when you're entering into these best of scenarios, and teams have that preparation and whatnot to make it through still on that other side and still be rocking the record that Team Secret Wales is. That absolutely still is something that I am viewing as that positivity towards them and their opportunity that will be coming up at MSI.
A lot of LCS squads on this board, obviously, in the 20 to 11 zone. Still waiting for some Cloud9 versus Lion Gaming head-to-heads and FlyQuest and Team Liquid. Finally, we get to see some LCS teams take care of business and convincingly beat teams that they should beat. And I think you're still sitting feeling a little bit better about FlyQuest than Team Liquid, as we got to see the matchup against Sentinels and pretty swiftly swat them aside. Griffin adds Shyvana to the fun jungle pick, and you heard lots of the casters talk about, but this was one of the best series individually we've gotten out of Masu. And now if you're listening to the comms for FlyQuest, Masu's actually being incredibly vocal, which is obviously something. He was the most quiet guy in those comms on the Inspired era rosters.
Think is wild, because that's kind of going under the radar right now, because the comms from Griffin are what everyone's talking about with how he was talking to Cryogen and just that whole vibes and energy going with this FlyQuest team is great right now, as you said, and where they have been. And again, this is kind of one of those ones where it shows that big leaps, those jumps in progress that you have already made as a group, as an organization, this split around. Just the fact that you are able to go, see you later, get out of my way to the Sentinels. We're in the playoffs. We're in that highway mode. And if you aren't on our speed, get out of the way, because we're still moving on through. We're still got a destination in mind. And I'm very thrilled to see that this FlyQuest team has been able to show out like this so far in the LCS.
And, living up to, again, the scrim hype the teams have talked about, them being potentially second best team in the LCS. Let's see it when they do match up again against some of these other top three squads. And not to say we weren't, Team Liquid, less convincing, but still a 3-0 against Shopify, but feel like FlyQuest is at a little bit of a higher level going forward. Then we have two wishy-washy, little bit suspect LPL, LCK squads in Anyone's Legend, who of course are already hanging out in the losers bracket after a disappointing series against, the greatest team on earth right now. But D plus Kia heads into the road to MSI with a 4-game win streak, 4-series win streak, but it's all against lower tier teams and none of the big boys.
Yeah, and so that's really going to be what value is there, right? Have you seen enough little iterations or inklings from this D plus Kia team within that win streak, which is impressive to whatever degree you want to acknowledge it in the LCK, when it is, yes, not against the top tier of competition, the squads that will be who you will have to run through again through any type of playoff scenario towards MSI, and never mind where it extends and it continues in this upper half, the top group of the LCK as we move forward. Going to be a very different world for DK, so good for them at the very least here, picking up the win streak now. Well, you very much should be.
And an omega gap between them and sixth place Hanj and Brion, like a 5-game or series difference, which means D plus fully locked into that ascend top tier, top 5 for the next rounds, which is something they did not have in 2025. Top of the table on this board, Cloud9 obviously still undefeated, waiting for them to hit back on the Rift, and Carmine Corp bounce back in this losers bracket. Yeah, they had some deficits against Giant X, but I think still never really in doubt any of that or the Navi series that they were going to come away with.
And it's still one of those ones where I don't think we are getting the best iteration these last few weekends of Carmine Corp. I don't think everything is flowing exactly as it should be when they are at their peak, or where they are clearly that team that is in that better mode than everyone else in the LEC. So there still is some areas that you could look for that improvement, for that sharpening up in this next series coming up for them. But again, one of these ones where still got life. Then no complaints in that regards when you are looking towards obviously the main goal of attending MSI.
Okay, you've waited long enough. This has been the news around the scene the whole last week. You're going, what is going on? A 1-8 and 13 squad that was not sniffing the top 20 of this list for the entirety of the spring season. They barely qualify for the main round of playoffs with a Game 5 win against LNG, and then World Elite proceed to upset Billy Gaming in insane fashion, as it looks like it's going to be Game 5. They hold the base defense and miraculously win, and follow that up by dominating Anyone's Legend 3-0. I don't know if we've seen a playoff turnaround bigger than this in LPL history for sure, but you could start talking about globally.
Yeah, you can put that in the category, as you said, laid out. But I don't think on the global scale we have seen a playoff underdog, a dark horse. Heck, this isn't a dark horse. This is a skeleton flaming horse from the dead coming back here in the LPL. This is insanity that we have this team being competitive and, as you laid out, surviving still through these playoff series and making them work, where they are now one series away, a 1-13 squad, one series away from locking down an MSI appearance, which I think to a lot of people would be the nightmare scenario for the LPL. I think regardless of where you are on how legitimate this run is from WE and what positives you can pull out of it, I don't think anybody is saying, yep, okay, next on the list, bring on the top from the LCK, bring on the best from the LEC and the LCS, where we got to embarrass them, whatever. I don't know if you're getting that out of a squad like WE, but absolutely is one of those ones where here at this position in the global power rankings, gotta give them some acknowledgement, some type of flowers for the run that you have seen, because again, this is as miraculous, as unexpected as possible to be in the position that WE was in heading towards playoffs, and to be having the conversation about them that we are now where they are in playoffs.
Yeah, obviously incredibly difficult to rank them on this list when, again, 1-13, but you're so heavily weighing these best of fives against two of the top three teams in the LPL. And sure, you could say BLG and AL weren't on their A game in those series, but this was 75% about WE absolutely showing up and playing at an incredibly high level. I think if anyone said Top Esports and World Elite is going to be the head-to-head for the first MSI spot, you'd probably be sweating a bit as an LPL fan.
It's weird. It just almost feels like for both Anyone's Legend and BLG, it felt like they showed up and they were expecting it to be this, little scrawny guy in the boxing ring. They get hit, and they get one, hit, and they're like, is that Sugar Ray Lewis over there? Holy moly, that is a haymaker. Yeah, this has absolutely been one of those ones where you got to give that credit over WE and what we have seen. But I'm still going to count myself in what would I would assume to be the majority camp that is doubtful about the future run here. And I think if you are looking at it from the LPL perspective, you're hoping that maybe this is where the old carriage turns into a pumpkin for WE.
Yeah, and listen, if Top Esports qualifies by beating World Elite, I think people are going to be very upset about that. But they did at least get their head-to-head win against JDG, where they were clearly the better squad there.
Yeah, and I think that is the important one when you're trying to, again, on top of the difference between the records of Top Esports and what is, again, the 1-13 WE, going to keep hammering home that point because of how crazy it is. But I think when you do look at that differences, and again, getting that series where it did play out between Top Esports and JDG, can understand where people would be more so in that camp for Top Esports. But still one of those ones that, again, if you're LPL fan, isn't exactly giving you the utmost of confidence, eyeing up the rest of the global scene as we move through these top tiers of the global power rankings.
And, because World Elite climbs in, it shifts kind of everything out around them. And even though Top Esports win, the shakiness of especially JDG and AL means it's an opportunity for G2 to climb back up. We, of course, had that head-to-head G2 versus MKOI Game 5 banger of a series. And despite the loss, you're still feeling very good, I think, about G2 and MKOI being either one favorites over a KC matchup right now.
Yeah, I think at the very least, right now, heading into this, next week or so of the LEC, it does give you those forerunners, right? Those two that are at the very front of the running and how you have seen them play throughout these playoff run right now, that you could, say it would be the favorites to be the representatives for the LEC for MSI. But you absolutely still can't count out a squad like KC when they are at their very best, as we talked about them a little bit earlier. But very much so, you have to throw squads like G2, like Movistar Koi. Never mind that head to head, but what we had seen from them before that point in the playoffs, getting to that point, absolutely throwing them as the two top teams in Europe.
Doesn't mean it's enough for them to quite crack into that top five, and it's as close as G2 has ever been in this split, and been in a long time, I would say. But really, the shift of the week outside of World Elite ascending through everything is with that Billy Gaming loss. And make no mistake, they're still hanging out in that top five. They get bumped down to the 4 zone, but the real story is, of course, the LCK now sweeping the podium as that top 3, and more importantly, Gen G getting a head-to-head against Hanwha Life and kind of stomping in some of these wins is enough for them to finally take back that number 1 spot on this list.
It's kind of a crazy story of one, as you laid out, BLG feeling some of the effects of their loss, dropping down in this type of situation, still hanging out in that top 5 representing, but no longer holding an advantage over the LCK and the top squads that we have seen from there. And entering into that conversation is then, what is that race between the top 3 squads within the LCK and what we have seen from them? Still very good stuff from T1, but it's not enough in comparison to having one of those type of marquee head-to-heads like you do have with Gen G and Hanwha Life, and recently Gen G being the one to come out on top.
And I know heading into this road to MSI, it is actually T1 that's going to be the second seed with a single game loss less than Gen G is enough for them to get into that top 2. But the reality is, all 3 of these LCK squads, T1, Gen G, and Hanwha, look absolutely terrifying right now. I think Pays has finally looked like that Kespa Cup form over the last couple of weeks for T1. Keen is getting crazy outplays for Gen G, and it's really just they have now reached the level that Hanwha Life has been at for the better part of 2 months.
It's the best case scenario for the LCK right now is that, as you laid out, you have Pays performing like pentakill Pays from the earlier part of the season, really vibing with the rest of this T1 lineup. You look at Hanwha Life, the type of coordination that you're getting from this squad, the play from Zeka, absolutely is one of those things that you got to be looking at through this split. And then for Gen G, this is the Gen G we were promised. They have finally awoken. We are finally removed from any confusion and dark cloud of taxes and whatever. It's all sorted out. And the team is playing like it is sorted out on Summoner's Rift. And they are the squad where, again, maybe not positionally because of the way things are in the LCK, but as far as power heading towards this big, section of the playoffs for the LCK, very much so looking at them as the top dog.
We're back in the normalcy of saying, oh man, only 2 of these teams can go to MSI. Like, these are 3 international quality teams right in this very moment. And it has been several weeks before it felt like all 3 of this terrifying 3-headed dragon in the LCK were like this. And like T1 it's not a distant third. I think head-to-head between any of these 3 could go either way on any given day. And listen, that's not to say this Billy, the loss to World Elite obviously hurts, but I don't think you can overreact by taking them out of the top 5 or anything. I think this is a wake-up call that they needed at some point, and they're already starting the long road to losers. They had a 3-0 against EDG, and yes, I understand it's EDG, but I'm fully expecting this squad to kind of steamroll their way through this losers bracket to find a rematch against World Elite one way or another.
It'd be a little bit of a different conversation before that series against EDG, even though it still would be one of those ones where you would try to talk about the erring more so on the side of what good you have seen from BLG and how they had earned that position in the first place throughout the play at first stand and through this part of this split before MSI. But it absolutely is one of those ones where you look at what they did in the series against EDG, you look at what is going to be in front of them still in this losers bracket run for the LPL. If everything still goes to plan, you still take care of business, check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark, you're going to MSI, no problems. You're still going to be in this conversation just right beside whoever is going to be the 2 out of the 3 that will represent from the LCK, and that's a good position to be in, as long as you're holding ground and making it on through this losers bracket of the LPL, which, given the run against EDG, and I know it does get a lot more stiff of a test against some of these teams lined up, but very much so good early signs in that rebound for BLG.
It might end up actually being a better or a blessing for BLG to have to go through this prove yourself type of gauntlet as opposed to an easy path that they've had for the majority of the LPL year here in 2026. So the only other squad in top 5 we haven't talked about, fresh off getting 2-0'd by both T1 and Gen G, I will say I'm not feeling great about KT's chances in this road to MSI bracket.
No, it's one of those ones where I think if that, expiration date has to be this playoff run road to MSI situation, I think you ain't getting it out of this KT roster squad. I don't think they've got that type of longevity here at this point. If you move the expiration date towards something like a world championship, and can you still improve against these top teams in the LCK? Can you, edge out DK and say, really, it's us 4 at the top, and then maybe start throwing down one of the top 3 down a little further and making it that conversation? Yeah, that's not out of the question. But going to MSI at this point, I think that has become that pie in the sky type of dream for KT, as the top 3 in the LCK have truly pushed themselves to that next tier.
Yeah, and you can talk about World Elite taking a KT page in going up against the big dogs over and over and over again, and finally pushing through after the win streak to come away with a victory. So maybe they're channeling some of that roller coaster. But that is it today for Liga Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. It's good to be back. And thanks for supporting us as always.